सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste to all.
Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute honor to welcome Dr. Priyadharshini Karve, a distinguished physicist, innovator, and climate action champion with over 25 years of impact. After earning her PhD in physics from the University of Pune, Dr. Karve pioneered breakthrough decentralized waste to fuel technologies and clean burning cook stoves to combat air pollution and reliance on firewood in rural India. A leading voice in sustainable urban strategy, she developed the Samudrik carbon footprint calculator and continues to lead national efforts at the CEO of Clean Energy Access Network, that is clean, and national convener of the Indian Network on Ethics and Climate Action, INECT, founder of Summit Envirotech, and recently recognized among 75 eminent Indian human science luminaries in Vigyan Vidushi. Dr. Karve brings a wealth of expertise on renewable energy and climate response. Please, ma'am, the stage is yours, and we are eager to hear from you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this very fascinating idea of sustainability. Uh, I think many of your speakers may have also done this, and generally, whenever there is a conversation on sustainability, uh, people try to bring in ideas from traditional wisdom from various schools of thought about being mindful of our consumption, of using resources minimally, and so on and so forth. But the idea of sustainability as it is understood and implemented today comes from a fairly modern definition which appeared in what is called as the Brundtland report, which came out in 1990s. And whether it is traditional ideas or the idea of Brundtland report, it is essentially linked with how do we ensure that the resources of planet Earth remain perpetually available to humans generation after generation. So this is more about how we interact with the resources of our planet. And many times people tend to relate with this idea from a very emotional perspective, but very seldom we look at it from a scientific perspective and with facts and figures, and how this has to be looked at now in the 21st century with the various challenges that we are facing. So, this is something that uh, I have been thinking about for a long time, and the thought process has evolved over the years, and I have been talking about this over the last few years at in various where we have a larger circle of the planet of the environment. Human is one of the species on this planet. So people is a circle which is inside this larger circle of the planet. And one of the things that people do is an economic activity. So the circle of profit has to be within the societal circle. So if we start looking at it in this way, then a lot of the conflicts, suddenly we start realizing that these are imaginary conflicts. For example, any economic activity which is harmful for the planet I mean, if you look at this picture, you can immediately reach the conclusion that it is going to be harmful for the people, because it is the planetary circle which is the basis of this entire idea. So any profit making activity that is harming the planet will not be sustainable by default if we change the image in our mind. So, if this is the idea that we want to convey to people, then there are a couple of very useful concepts that have come up in the last few years. One is this idea of ecological footprint. And when I first came across this, it really impacted me hugely, because I was born in 1970s, and I can see from this image that my entire lifetime, the ecological footprint of humanity has been larger than the area of the planet. So this idea of ecological footprint, I'll give you a very simple example to understand this. Suppose you want to ensure that you get 100 grams of cooked rice every day for one full year. That is 365 days into 100 grams. So somewhere 36.5 kilogram of rice has to be grown for you as an individual. So there is an area of land that is locked up in just growing 36.5 kilograms of rice for you. And the rice is not going to grow on its own. You will have to water it, you have to add fertilizer to it, then the rice gets harvested, it has to be processed, then it has to travel to the market and then to your home. So there is an energy and resource, material resources that are going into that piece of land, which come from other pieces of land. So there are areas of planet Earth which are locked into just this one activity of getting the rice grown and to your house, and then you are going to cook it. So another energy input, and then you will eat it and generate waste that has to be absorbed somewhere. So you can, in principle, calculate all these areas. And if you add all these areas, then that is the ecological footprint of just this one activity in your annual cycle of your lifestyle. So if you think of what all we do in our 24 days daily cycle and the 365 days annual cycle, all the material resources, energy resources that we use, if we can calculate that in terms of the area of the earth from where these energy and material resources are coming from, that is our individual ecological footprint. And if we do this for all the 8 billion people in the world and add it up, that will give us the ecological footprint of the entire human population. Now, obviously, this is not how the calculation is done. There are some assumptions that in every country there are certain number of people living this lifestyle, and therefore these are the energy and material resources that they use, and therefore this is the average ecological footprint of that group of people. So based on these assumptions, these additions are done. But and you can see research papers about this where people look at various lifestyles becoming prevalent, and all the numbers that are being quoted vary from 1 point something of the planet Earth up to even 3 planets Earth. I mean, if everybody has to live the way Americans live, then it will be 3 or 4 or even 5 planet Earths that we will need. So this is the idea behind ecological footprint. And as you can see from this graph, this resource consumption has been going up. Since 1970s, it has gone beyond the area of the planet. The complementary idea to this, which is something which is easier for people to relate with, is the idea of Earth overshoot day. So the idea here is that whatever resources we should be using in order to remain sustainable on the planet, there is a quota of resources per year per person. And that gets deposited in some kind of a bank account on 1st of January. And then we start using it. And it turns out that we are finishing off this resource that is our designated quota before 31st December. So that is the Earth overshoot day, because from that day onwards we are having an overdraft on our bank account. We are using resources by borrowing from somewhere. So that is the idea of Earth overshoot day. So the way this curve has been going, it is predicted that if we keep on going the way business as usual, so to say, then by 2030 we'll hit the Earth overshoot day will come in June, by end of June. That means we'll practically be done, we will be finishing our resources in 50% of the time. That means we need practically another planet Earth to sustain us, which is definitely not going to happen. So, and if you look at the Earth overshoot days in the last few years, in 2020s, the ecological footprint has consistently come out to be 1.75 Earths or more. In 23, the overshoot day was 2nd of August. In 24, it dropped to 1st of August. 25, it dropped to 24th July. There is a slight bit of hope because in 26 this was pushed forward to 30th July. So are we on the green pathway? Have we started recovering? We don't know. I mean, 5 days is a very small time, but there is some slight spot of hope that maybe things have started changing. But this is the whole idea of ecological footprint and Earth overshoot day, which helps us understand the extent or the graveness of the unsustainability trap that we are caught in as a global civilization. Now, carbon footprint is a subset of the ecological footprint. Carbon footprint only relates with the fossil fuel resources that we use, but it is an important subset. And if we focused only on that and started reducing our carbon emissions, we can start pushing the Earth overshoot day forward. That is also another message that these studies keep on giving us. Now, where is this extra Earth? Where is that extra 0.75 coming from? So, obviously, we have only one planet. So, what we are essentially doing is we are robbing from the future. Resources which should be kept for the future so that the subsequent generations will continue to have a fair access to resources. Those resources are being used today. So we are extracting from the future Earth and making life more and more difficult for generations to come. Where are the roots? I mean, if you start scientifically then analyzing that, once you have identified the problem, where is it coming from? Now, if you think about the total amount of resources being consumed by the entire human population, then as a mathematical equation, this turns out to be number of individuals multiplied by amount of resources per individual. So there is one part of the equation which is population and the other part is consumption. Now, population is something that many people are very much concerned about. They have been concerned about since the 20th century, since this idea of sustainability, the definition of sustainability has come up in modern times. But if you look at the actual data, what is the picture that emerges? Currently, the global population is 8 billion people, but the population growth rates have started dropping. These population growth rates started dropping from 1960 itself. The population has kept on increasing, but it is now stabilizing. And it is expected that the world population will stabilize at about 10 billion people by 2060s. India is the most populous country in the world. Our current population is 1.3, 1.4 billion. We don't know exactly. I mean, the census has been delayed for unknown reasons. But even if looking at the trends, Indian population will also be stable by 2070 to about 1.6 billion people. So what has been going on? So population increases by two factors. One is number of new people coming into the population, and the longer the existing people live, that number keeps on increasing. So over the last 50, 60 years, the birth rates have consistently dropped across the world, but lifespans have increased. So while less and less number of people are coming into the population, but less and less number of people are leaving the population. So that is why the number kept on increasing, but the rate of increase of lifespan has also dropped down now. Average lifespans now are close to 80 years. and the number of children being born still continues to drop, and that is why the populations are now stabilizing. So in a way we should actually celebrate that in the 20th century, whatever measures that we have put forth, and I'll not go into that right now due to lack of time, but there were measures that were put forth when this was realized that the population is growing and people use terms like population explosion, etc. Measures were put in place, and over the last 50, 60 years, we have seen the positive impacts of those measures. We have solved the population part of this equation. Now it's of course important that we keep those measures up and don't allow the population numbers to again start going up. The consumption side, however, is still remaining unsolved. The richest 10% are consuming 50% of the total resources of the planet. And the poorest 50% have to survive with just 10% of resources. This is based on the data of this century, of 21st century. So basically, the challenge of sustainability today is a twofold challenge. One is how do we reduce the total consumption of humanity as a whole, which will lead us to environmental stability. And that is the part which gets discussed the most. But the second part is equally important. How do we reduce inequality in consumption so that we achieve social stability also? Both of these have to go hand in hand. Today what happens is a lot of preaching and lecturing is targeted at those who fall into this poorest 50% or the middle 30-40% people whose consumption is anyway low. Then reducing their consumption is not going to solve the sustainability problem. Hand in hand, we have to focus on reducing the total consumption and reducing inequality in consumption, and that is the 21st century challenge. This is related to planetary boundaries. This is also another idea which came up in the first decade of this century, that there are 9 planetary systems that we have to keep a watch on. And as long as we stay in the safe operating space for these 9 systems, we will remain sustainable. So this was an idea that was put forth, and this has been tracked since it was when it was first presented in 2008. We had 3 boundaries for which we had crossed into the danger zone. In 2022, when people looked back at this again, 2023, we have now transgressed 6 boundaries, and only 3 boundaries is where we remain in the safe operating space. So we are getting deeper and deeper into the unsustainability trap as far as the total consumption is concerned. So this is really the key question. Does the planet have enough resources to sustain 10 billion humans? I mean, if that is the number where population is going to get capped, then do we have enough resources to sustain 10 billion humans with a respectable quality of life for each and every one of them? And this we have to achieve while the resource base is becoming increasingly uncertain, which is what these planetary boundaries are showing us. For example, the biodiversity is depleting. So our resource base in terms of the biosphere is becoming uncertain, but we have to ensure that 10 billion humans sustain themselves. So that is how we need to define the challenge. Now, there are lessons to be learned from history. Humans, I mean, the Homo sapiens have been around for about 250,000 years. And we have been responding to planetary level changes. When we were hunter gatherers in the early part of humanity, Homo sapiens evolved in Africa, and about 100,000 years ago, the last ice age set in. There have been over many years cycles of ice ages and warming periods. When the ice age set in, the water levels went down, ocean water levels went down, which allowed people to actually walk out of Africa and then from Asia to other parts of the world. Even small canoes were good enough to cross whatever water bodies were there. So humans migrated and populated the entire planet. Throughout this period, we remained hunting and foraging. About 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age ended, and the shift in the ecosystems around was one of the triggers which sort of led to humans shifting to agriculture, settling down and agriculture, particularly around the equator, and then slowly elsewhere. And then that was the trigger which led us to forming civilizations, building cities, developing new technologies, and we have come to the modern sort of a globally connected civilization that we are currently, and we have also created this trap of unsustainability through this journey. So all of this has happened in the last 12,000 years. Now, interestingly, there are other complex organisms. There are elephants, for example, or whales in the sea, oceans, which are also intelligent, fairly intelligent beings. They also experience the change in the ecosystem conditions when Ice Age ended. But humans are the only ones who shifted to a pathway which which was not which was not being done, which was not there to see and mimic. It was something which was an invention of human mind. This shift to agriculture and then whatever that followed. It's only our species that has done this. So there must be some other triggers other than just change in the ecosystems around us. So this is something which a few people have been sort of hypothesizing, that maybe there is an instinctive quest for sustainability, and that is the driver of change. So just a little bit of maths here. The total land area of the planet is 1.5 into 10 raised to 8 square kilometers. Just the land area. We are leaving out the oceans. Now, as hunter gatherer, if you want to sustain an individual as a hunter gatherer in an average, fairly well endowed ecosystem, then 10 square kilometer area should be exclusively accessible to that one person, because some of the resources are going to be regenerated. Fruits will come again, or mushrooms will come again, but that's going to take some time. So you need exclusive access to 10 square kilometer area, and then you can keep on going around that area. You'll keep on getting resources and you'll remain sustainable. So think about this, that 1.5 into 10 raised to 8 square kilometers, if we divide this into 10 square kilometer plots and assign one person on each plot, that will give us the theoretical carrying capacity for the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. And that turns out to be 15 million people. I mean, this is simple maths. Every 10 square kilometers, one person, 1.5 into 10 raised to 8 square kilometers means 15 million people. And the human population across the world remained fairly low for the longest time. Till about 12,000 years ago, this was the only lifestyle that humans knew, and the population remained much, much below 15 million people. So everything was fine. You stepped out, you found something to eat, you found something to hunt, your belly is full on that day, tomorrow is another day. But what might have happened is slowly the population was increasing. There would have been areas where the frequency of an episode would increase, where you go out and you don't find anything because somebody else has already taken the resources from that location. In other words, there is no exclusive access anymore. Other people have started encroaching in the areas that you are foraging or hunting in, and more days of hunger. So that, and plus you now have a brain which is thinking, and you realize that this lifestyle is no longer working for me. So you start experimenting with something else. So that may have been one of another important driver to try something different and get into agriculture. And when I use the word agriculture, it doesn't only mean sowing seeds, but also animal husbandry, all of it together. So basically, you domesticate some other species for your own benefit. Now, what happens is when you fence an area and start taking care of some crop or a herd, then you are going to make sure that the conditions are very ideal for that species to grow there. The carrying capacity, the ability to generate resources of that 10 square kilometer area increases fivefold. So now increases 50-fold, because now instead of one person, that same area can generate resources for 50 people. So the theoretical carrying capacity suddenly increases to 750 million persons, and again you are sustainable. And that has been the basic human lifestyle for 12,000 years. We have, of course, created more different lifestyles and consuming more and so on and so forth. But let's not get into that complication. If we just look at this transition, it is estimated that when this shift happened, the global human population would have been around 5 to 8 million people. That would actually be close to the practical carrying capacity, because theoretical carrying capacity may be 15 million, but you can't live on top of Mount Everest, for example. So there are areas of land which are not livable. So the actual carrying capacity would be much less. So 5 to 8 million people may have started hitting those limits of sustainability, which prompted a shift in the way we live. So that is an important lesson that we can learn from the past, that our ancestors, just following their instincts, they didn't have any of this data or science available, but instinctively they realized that if we are hitting the limits of the planet in a particular lifestyle, we need to change the way we live. We are facing a similar challenge now, and everybody aspires for this so-called urban lifestyle, which has been around just for 300 years. Our ancestors managed to change something which has existed for hundreds of thousands of years in order to address the sustainability challenge by radically changing their way of life. And it, I mean, people say that how can we change this current economy and current way of life, which has existed just for 300 years? So if something can be changed after hundreds and thousands of years, then the other things can be changed after 300 years. So that is the first level of confidence that we need to build, that this is, we can move on a different pathway. Our ancestors have done it in the past. We can do it today and tomorrow. Historically, this change in lifestyle has also been accompanied by change in the way we have used energy and material sources. When we were nomadic, we were relying on our own muscle power. When we learned to control fire, we started relying on wood fuels. In materials, we were using stones, leather, bones, vines, leaves, and so on. When we shifted to agriculture, we added the muscle power of animals, we added the energy of water flows, we expanded our material use to, in addition to stones and leather and so on, we started using baked clay, plant fibers, copper, bronze, iron, all of this, we expanded our materials basket. If we think about the early industrial era, the term industrial revolution is very misleading. It seems to imply that there were no industries before industrial revolution, but that is not true. Industries were everywhere across the world before the industrial revolution, and these depended on use of solar thermal energy, wind flows, water flows. By this time, we had started using, apart from steel and copper and bronze, other metals slowly coming into our material basket. If we look at the shift to modern industrial world, particularly the 19th and 20th century, this was a shift. Till then, we continued to use previous materials and energy sources added on to that. But once we discovered coal and petroleum, we basically discarded everything else earlier and shifted our entire energy use to coal and petroleum. And we also invented a way of making electricity. So that then started driving our energy use. and we practically started using the entire periodic table as far as material resources are concerned. So the change in lifestyle is not just about choosing how much or what to use. It is also accompanied by the change in the way we interact with energy and materials. So that is also something important to keep in mind. Now, if we look at this early industrial world before the industrial revolution, there was no stress on planetary resources. Industries were everywhere. The energy sources were low power. There was a heavy reliance on human muscle power. The production rate was low, and therefore the consumption rate was low. We tend to romanticize and glorify this period by saying that our ancestors were wise and therefore they were making do with less resources. But it was also because they had access to less resources. It was not a choice made, a conscious choice made in spite of abundance of resources. So that is something that we should not lose sight of. There is also many people believe that if we go back to these type of economic systems, that is the ideal sustainable situation. But remember, as I said earlier also, sustainability is not just about maintaining the environmental integrity. It is equally about creating a better world for people. If we look at this period, this was not an ideal world. There was huge exploitation of labor force. There were frequent epidemics. The living conditions for most people were very, very poor, and at the other end, there were a handful of people who were living extravagantly. Huge income disparities, frequent wars. This is not the world that we want to go back to. We cannot go back. There is also another thing that this was sustainable for less than a billion people. Now we are heading towards 10 billion people. So this is not going to be a sustainable change. This is not going to be the ideal world that we want to get back to. Industrial revolution, so called, was basically an energy revolution. We shifted from low density energy sources to high density and low cost energy sources. That was accompanied by technological innovation. The production capacities suddenly expanded, and this happened in one tiny area in Europe, where the invention of steam engine allowed access to more and more coal. The industrial innovation also happened, and suddenly factories could produce more goods, which meant that they could also consume more raw materials, and they needed to find markets for these extra goods being produced. And that is what was the driving factor behind European imperialism, that you need to control additional land to get additional raw materials and additional people to create markets for our goods. And this is what has led to climate change, resource depletion, waste, pollution, unsustainability, basically. But on the other hand, industrialization has also improved human condition. We have seen reduction in infant mortality. We have seen increase in lifespans. We have seen many more people living in better living conditions. Life became easier and more affordable for many more people than before this industrial revolution. Labor laws and human rights came in to protect those whose muscle power was powering the industrial revolution. Democratic governance came into existence in most of the world. These have not been perfect systems, not flawless systems. Implementations have been problems, but there are these protections now which didn't exist before at all. So industrialization has also created positive outputs. So we cannot look at things in a very black and white terms. We cannot say that before industrialization everything was perfect and after industrialization everything has gone to the dogs. That is a very simplistic viewpoint to hold. There are gray areas, and we have to just scientifically analyze what each transition has meant for humanity. What have we gained? What have we lost? Today, we see that we must transition away from fossil fuels. And this is primarily because of the adverse environmental impacts, climate change, biodiversity loss, and so on. In the 20th century, people toyed with this idea of peak energy. that we are going to run out of petroleum and coal and therefore we must make a transition. Nobody thinks of that like that now, because every time it seemed like we are coming close to peak oil, we either found new reserves or invented technologies which allowed us to access till then are inaccessible reserves. So there are huge resources of fossil fuels. We are not going to run out of these very soon. But we didn't shift from stone age to copper age because we ran out of stones. We shifted because that shift made sense. It created something better. So that is the viewpoint that we have to adopt now also, that fossil fuels may be there, but we need to stop using them because of their adverse environmental impact. But we should also acknowledge that fossil fuels have created a better world. How do we ensure that while moving away into a new energy transition, we do not reverse the socio-economic gains that we have got from fossil fuels? And how do we handle this shift, the economic and political fallout of that, something which is happening around us right now, the global politics, the way it is evolving. One of the undercurrents is fossil fuel producing regions wanting to stay relevant as far further in future as possible. So how, and we are definitely not handling that transition very well. So we have to figure out how do we handle this economic and political fallout of transitioning away from fossil fuels. So these are our challenges that we are currently facing. Are there solutions? Energy wise, definitely we also have technologies that clearly show a pathway that we can move away from fossil fuels. There is solar photovoltaic, solar thermal, wind energy, micro hydro, biofuels. There are futuristic energy sources like green hydrogen, maybe nuclear fusion sometime in the future. So there are options. These are environment friendly options and people friendly options. These are not going to create pollution. There is not mining involved, which will displace people, and so on and so forth. But these are not as high density resources as fossil fuels are, and these are intermittent. Some of these are intermittent resources, and therefore, shift to these resources has to be accompanied by increase in efficiency, both on supply side and demand side, and new thinking around energy storage. In fact, we see a lot of innovation has come in. Solar photovoltaics are becoming more and more practically feasible. And part of that is because of the revolutionary changes in energy storage. From lead acid batteries, for example, we have moved to lithium ion batteries. Lithium, by the way, is 100% recyclable. Lead thrown away was causing pollution, but lithium is not polluting and it can be 100% recycled. So mining for lithium doesn't have to expand just because we are using more and more lithium. The old lithium can be recycled. We just have to create better systems for that. And we are now moving towards possibly sodium batteries, which are even more benign than lithium batteries. So a lot of things are happening on efficiency and energy storage, which make this shift more and more practically feasible. Even today, if you want to produce electricity, building a coal fired power station is far more expensive than building, let's say, a solar farm. So already the shift is happening for economic reasons alone, not just for environmental reasons. So there are a lot of positive and optimistic signs there, as long as we keep in mind that this is our agenda. On one hand, maintain environmental integrity of the planet Earth, but don't lose sight of the fact that we still have unfinished business in creating a decent quality of life for all people. That is the pathway to true sustainability as far as the 21st century is concerned. There are a number of people who are coming up with new economic models that will be more aligned with this thought process. This is a very interesting economic model which is called donut economics. If you go to TED Talks and search for donut economics, a very powerful TED Talk by the person who proposed this idea, Kate Raworth. She is a British economist. And that TED talk is really very powerful. Please do check it out when you can. This idea is based on the whole circular economy model, that we have to be mindful that our total use of resources does not exceed the planetary boundaries. So there is an ecological ceiling to how much resource we can use as a global human civilization. But we must use a certain amount of resources in a way that will ensure that all the basic needs of the entire 8 billion going on 10 billion people will be satisfied. So there is a ecological ceiling and there is a social foundation. Our resource use must stay within these two boundaries. So the idea of constantly expanding economies, constantly increasing GDP, these are 20th century ideas which are now outdated. We have to now move to this visualization of economy where we reach that sweet spot and then take an effort to stay there. Staying there also requires a lot of effort to stay in the safe and just space for humanity. This is a theoretical model, so to say. There are practical ways of converting this into reality. And this is another framework called the Social Progress Index framework. This is based on the idea of sustainable development goals, but it actually groups together basic human needs, foundations of well being, and opportunity for making further progress. So these are the three blocks, and in that there are indicators which are measurable. You can actually put numbers on those indicators. So that is how this framework is created. There is also a TED talk by Michael Green who explains this framework. So that's also a very interesting TED talk to look at. But you can also look at the website of the Social Progress Index framework, and every year they are doing this analysis across the world. In fact, there is a group which is doing this district by district within India. What is the social progress index of each district? So these are some interesting factual resources to look at to try and understand how do we move into this circular economy regime. I just want to highlight this one point, that the social progress index is a better number to look at even than the human development index, because the human development index totally ignores what is happening to the environment. It only looks at the economic and social good that is being delivered. Whereas social progress index is totally independent of GDP. So this is a graph of GDP on x-axis and social progress index on y-axis. Now, if you see the way this graph goes, when you are a very, very poor country, there is a linear relationship. If you increase your GDP, the social conditions for the citizens will also improve. But then comes a point where this relationship starts breaking. You may increase your GDP, but you will not get an equal increase in social progress. India's GDP per capita is 3000 USD thereabouts, and its SPI score right now is 59 out of 100. So we are somewhere, we are somewhere close to this part, these orange dots. We are somewhere here. So we are already at a place where the relationship between GDP and social progress index starts breaking up. We are at that lower income level. So it is high time that in our economic planning, we reduce our focus on GDP and start looking at what actually is happening to the living conditions for the citizens and how do we improve those conditions rather than bothering about GDP. So we are at that crucial stage where that mindset shift needs to happen. So that's just the that is the only point I want to flag as far as India's economic planning is concerned. So just to wind up, currently we are on that top path, unfortunately. By 2030, ecological footprint is expected to further increase, global warming will further increase. Many people are predicting that by 2050, we will start seeing civilizational level collapse in different parts of the world. Wars and famines will start plaguing us, and instead of the population stabilizing at 10 billion, we will see that by the end of the century, many people will die because of all these disasters, and the population will shrink to about 2 to 3 billion people. And therefore, then in 2100, we will have a sustainable human society where everyone is equally poor. We don't want to be on that path. We would rather be on that green path where we want to see the ecological footprint reduced, global warming reduced, so that by 2050 we are more in control. We start slowing down the environmental crisis and we remain 9 to 10 billion people by the end of the century while becoming sustainable, while creating a good quality of life for everyone. So that is the pathway that we want to be on. How do we make this happen is really the question that we have to address. And I feel, and this is something which I have been saying for the last nearly a decade. Whenever I talk with young people, I tell them not to listen to their parents and teachers. And whenever I talk with older people, I plead with them to let the young people think through these issues independently. Because these people who have now got that popular term Gen Z, these are the young people. They will either be the last generation in a collapsing civilization, or they will be the first generation that attains true sustainability. Which path they will get into is going to be decided by these couple of decades. The political and economic decisions taken over these 2 decades will really decide the fate of humanity for the next 200 years. Uh, Years down the line, people will look back and maybe do PhD on what happened in these 2 decades. You and I, we are basically writing the history of the future with the personal, professional, and community level decisions that we are taking. Unfortunately, our experiences and the wisdom that we have gained is proving increasingly useless because the conditions today, the 21st century challenges, even the planetary conditions are something which we have never experienced. The technological challenges are something that we have never experienced. We carry a lot of baggage of our learnings, and that baggage is hindering us from seeing the path forward. We need to create more space for these young people to be in charge of their own destiny because they are looking at it with unprejudiced minds. They are the ones who are going to really find the solutions, and this has been sort of pretty visible in the world if you think back. Wherever younger leadership has come into power in a country, that country has taken a different path and a better path. Think about New Zealand, think about Denmark, think about what is happening in New York right now. So the more young people get into decision making positions and have the power to shape their own destiny, the greater chance we will have that we get onto the better path rather than the disastrous path for the future. So that is what I wanted to share with all of you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, madam, very, very illuminating talk, new insights which we'll all remember, particularly about, elderly people to keep their wisdom to themselves and let the young move ahead. But will you kindly tell us a little bit about your take on technology and its impact on sustainable development? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I have mixed feelings because see, the thing is, when I was young, computerization was happening in various fields, and there was a lot of fear that people will lose jobs and things will actually become worse. I was, in fact, as a PhD scholar in mid 90s, was one of the first people to get internet access in India. And at that time also I saw that many of the people who suddenly got this access were doing more, finding games to play and things like that. As a PhD scholar, that is what we were doing. But then things settled down, and we started actually using internet productively. Computerization has eased our life in a large way. So the way these discussions that are happening around AI, for example, I sort of see echoes of the same discussions that happened when internet and computerization first came in. So I feel that maybe right now, because it is a big change, everyone is scared of the change, but we may find a way to actually make the change work for us. Right now, for example, there is a lot of concern about the water requirement for cooling of data centers. Uh, but the the cooling requirement comes because our electronics is dependent on silicon. What if we shifted away from silicon to something? So that can also be a pathway to have data centers, but which will not require so much cooling. So technology keeps on advancing. Challenges come up and challenges are solved. So we cannot, I mean, all these projections that are being made that there will be so many data centers and therefore so much water uses, maybe not. Technology will advance and water requirement may go down. So there are different ways in which things can evolve. As long as we are mindful of the challenges, we will keep on solving them. If we don't face the challenges, then it becomes a problem, which is what happened with fossil fuels. I mean, they never acknowledged that climate change is a problem, and that is why it became a big problem. If it was acknowledged and solutions were put in place early enough, we would not be in the mess that we are currently. So, being mindful of technology use and continuing to have that goal, that the goal is that entire humanity's life should improve while remaining within the planetary boundaries. I think we'll be okay if we can do that.
Thank you very much. I have posted a link on the our chat box, which is about I think Yahoo is the name of the person, and he is talking about you know a new kind of a personality which AI might generate. And so long we have been using everything as a tool, but now AI has the potential of acting as an agent, and it has got own capabilities of reinventing things and taking decisions. And we have given corporations a kind of a legal identity, but AI is already assuming kind of legal identity. For example, if I open Google today, it's the software that decides which are the news items that Google will put up to
Yep.
me. It's not under my control. It's somebody else has decided that because my past experience in this, so I should be shown this and that out
Yeah.
of the millions of news items which are there. So we are already being controlled without our knowledge by software choices you see people are making for on behalf of us. Could you please tell a little bit about that, madam?
Yeah, that is true. But as I'm saying that we may gain control. Actually, after all, we are a thinking brain which has evolved over, billions of years of evolution, and the electronics which uh, is trying to mimic us requires an external energy source, the button of which is in our hand. So I feel optimistic that there are challenges, but we will overcome those. That is my take on as a physicist.
Thank you, madam. You are very optimistic. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So, Madam Dr. Priyadharshini, first of all, I think it's a big learning lesson for me because I worked in the social sector, worked in the agriculture sector, and so on and so forth. After listening your talk, I was reminding when I was a student, maybe 8th standard, T.R. Malthus. Malthus in
Mhm.
theory of population, which you talked
Yeah.
about. As you say that in 2050, still this theory of Malthus will be applicable.
No, that is not what I'm saying. I'm actually saying that he was wrong.
Okay.
Because our population is stabilizing now, whereas in 1950s, 60s, people thought that it is going to explode and consume the entire planet. But actually, it is just 10% people who are consuming 50% resources. That is now a bigger problem than the number of people because the number is stabilized.
So, because you talk about the famines and natural calamities, in this climate change, what is happening in the country? Some parts of the countries, look at the rainfall
Yeah,
statistics, they're finding really difficult to cope up.
yeah,
And just
yeah.
add to this, madam, only one last question. If you look at the natural farming, do you think have any correlation with the sustainability in the agriculture and livestock? Thank you.
Um, well, so I'm not really an agricultural expert, but anything which reduces resource consumption is going to work for us today. As long as we can maintain, because ultimately it is the food security for 10 billion people that we have to keep in mind. So natural farming will have to find ways to keep the productivity up as we shift away from chemical fertilizers and chemicals used in agriculture because that is creating now more problems than benefits. Same way, the same logic, as I said, is applicable to fossil fuels. That now the fossil fuels benefits are less, adverse impacts are more, so we need to shift away from that without losing on the gains that we got from fossil fuels. Same logic has to be applied for agriculture also. That natural farming, but keep the productivity up and shift away from chemicals in agriculture. Find pathways for doing that.
Thank you so much, madam. Last only, sorry, I take 1 minute only. Do you think the agriculture revolution, which we started in 1970 71, has created adverse impact on the resources available in the country?
So again, I mean, if we look at things, people respond to immediate problems, and then some other new problems come up which we try to address later. So we can look at it that way. That agricultural revolution did bring in food security, not just for India but for other parts of the world too. People's nutritional intake improved, and therefore productivity improved. But as I said, we are now reached a stage where further increase in productivity is not happening. But we are starting to see the adverse impacts more. So now is the time to figure out a different pathway. But I wouldn't say that that was a wrong thing to do. Just as, I mean, there are some people who claim that agriculture was the first mistake that humans made. But if we hadn't shifted to agriculture, we would not be living in the world that we are living right now, which has a lot of positives for a lot of people. So it's the same outlook for green revolution too.
Thank you so much.
Namaskar, madam. I just wanted to ask, just now we were discussing about this data centers. So recently in Mumbai, there are so many data centers are already operational or under
Mm.
construction. I think even in Pune also near
Yeah,
Bhosri, one is under
yeah,
construction.
yeah.
So I have personally visited myself also data centers. So there are many demonstration you can see like people are opposing the data center. But most of the data centers are cooled by air cooled chillers. So
Yes.
as per my knowledge, there is no much use of water. So
Yep.
what is the reason people are opposing it?
Yeah, so what happens, Amolji, is that when a technology first comes on board, it is. I mean, one doesn't wait till everything is perfect before you launch it. So at that time, water cooling was prevalent, and that idea has stuck in people's mind. But as I was saying, technology advances. I mean, it's not that technologists are some kind of villains who want to get ready, who want to consume the world's resources. So, if water is going to be scarce and you want to have a data center, what do you do? So, solutions have been found. But these don't reach the popular discourse, and therefore people keep thinking the same way. The same thing has happened with nuclear power, for example. The early nuclear reactors were big, were more prone to accidents, and devastating accidents did happen. So there is this whole anti-nuclear sentiment in people's minds. But now the nuclear technology has also advanced. The amount of radioactive waste generated is very, very small. The safety measures are much better in place. You can now have small scale decentralized nuclear reactors, but still the technology is not getting an uptake because that old fear still stays there. So technology advances, but the popular perception of the technology doesn't advance. And then there are other political reasons also why people keep on opposing something in spite of knowing it. There are economic rivalries which also come into play. So there is all this complexity at play, and we need to therefore the more people are able to access information and have developed the ability to think for themselves, that is also another big thing that needs to happen through education, through awareness raising, through activities like this, which is creating a knowledge resource which is accessible for many more people, which will go beyond even this meeting. So, all of these efforts are, if we create more thoughtful, discerning people, then some of these issues will start resolving themselves. It's a big ask, but that's the direction we have to keep moving in.
Trying to supplement that, maybe, yeah. So I think what is very important when I look at sustainability is that we must differentiate between knowledge and wisdom. There is, as Asimov puts it, the saddest part of our life now is that science is gathering knowledge much faster than society is gathering wisdom. And for me, sustainability is also uh, it's basically an attitude. It is not an add-on thing, but it is uh, our basic concern for life, for people around. It's a basic empathy towards them. So if we look at ourselves as an integral part of this wholeness and oneness and fullness of life, then we will never be unsustainable in our lifestyle. Like we would have Sayyam restraint in our consumption, we would have empathy for other people, so they would be sharing. So automatically the resources would be distributed to those who do not have resources enough. So I think along with science, technology, the human mind has to change. It has to be more. It should have more empathy, more
Yeah, yeah,
compassion,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
more Sayyam, restraint. And I feel these are the basic principles of true sustainability.
Yeah, that's true, and that is also achieved through scientific development. I mean, think about this: that there was a point when people thought that Earth is the center of the universe and humans are the most important species, and scientific data shifted that thinking to the understanding that we are just one planet in an ordinary solar system and we are just one species among others. There is genetic data which shows that all 8 billion of us are actually very closely related through the mitochondrial DNA, which then sort of gives a deeper meaning to what is there in our, we say that they all, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, for example.
Yes.
So there is that genetic data which supports that, and that gives it a deeper meaning. So how do we look at scientific thought, advancement of
Yeah.
scientific thought, and how do we internalize it in our overall philosophy of life is the key part. I
Yes.
totally agree with you.
Because,
Uh,
yes.
and this
Science,
compartmentalization of science
no,
education as something
no,
very,
because
just
science,
material is wrong.
yeah, science is actually talking about this universal consciousness
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
but
yeah.
people in their living, in the way people live, that anthropocentric greed,
Yes.
that consumption has kept on increasing in
Yeah,
spite of
yeah, yeah.
science coming closer to this
Yes.
focus.
Yeah.
Sorry, it is me, Prakash ji. I'm Madan here, along with Vasudev ji. Taking a take on ma'am's lecture, ma'am, really you are set at between the rich and divide gap in terms of the consumption of resources. The approach being that is one is to build the resilience of the poor to manage the overall situation. That is one way. Or transform the way of thinking of the elite or the better off in terms of moderating the consumption of resources. Given the situation, the way forward, how do you like to take, what is your
Yeah.
take or suggestions on that, ma'am?
Yeah, that is true. So, when we talk with those who have less access, definitely the focus should be on how to better survive on whatever is available. But the last part that I was talking about, if we change the global economic system so that it is no longer profitable to continue doing business the conventional way. If the economies of the world start valuing that circular pathway than the expansion of economies and GDP. So, for example, there was a discussion I was part of on green businesses, and what one person said sort of stuck in my mind, that one of the hallmark of green business should be what that the business decides right at the beginning, that what should be the ratio of salary of the CEO to the salary of the lowest paid person. Fix that ratio and keep to that. It is not just about producing eco-friendly products and services, but it is also about how do you think of your business. Today, the CEOs are taking insane amount of salary, and the lowest paid person is just about managing to survive. That needs to change right as a DNA of the business itself, and not as an afterthought. So these are economic ideas. So if we start valuing circular economic ideas, and that becomes a better way of earning recognition, and people basically want to be raised on a pedestal. So rather than putting billionaires up there, if we put green entrepreneurs who practice what they preach up there, change the economics, the way economics operates, then things will start falling in place. So people are not going to make conscious choices. I mean, humans are inherently selfish. That has been the key to our success as a species. Um, I mean, all other genus has multiple species. The Homo is the genus where only we have survived, which means that we have killed off everybody else or absorbed their DNA within us. So we are inherently selfish. Let us accept that and try to see how smartly we can use that selfishness in a positive way. That is the way economic theories and economic processes and systems. If we can get those to change, then things will start falling in place.
लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ